Hello everyone, my name is Protesilaos, also known as Prot. In this video I want to talk to you about the basics of org mode. Org mode is one of the pillars of the Emacs ecosystem. It is one of the best applications in the Emacs milieu. You can use it to maintain simple plain text notes. You can use it to manage your to-do list in a very efficient way. You can use it to handle your agenda and see your appointments for the coming week, month, year, and so on. You can use org documents as the source of files that are exported to websites, that appear on websites, or are available as PDFs and then printed material. In short, org mode is very powerful, very capable. We can start tapping into that potential by understanding the markup notation of org mode. And this is what I want to focus on today, as well as to show you some of the basic capabilities and common patterns of interaction. What is notation? What do we mean by markup here? As I said, org mode is plain text. However, certain characters acquire a special meaning in certain contexts. This meaning is to either structure the document in a certain way or apply styling to it. Let's see this right away. Perhaps the most common element of markup is the asterisk at the beginning of a line, followed by a space and some text, which means that this is a heading. This is a heading, whereas this is a paragraph. A paragraph. I cannot type anymore. This is a paragraph. And the difference between them can also be visual, depending on your theme or the styles that you have configured. But even if they look identical, they function differently and they will look different when org is exported to some other format. But we will see this in practice. Paragraphs are separated from each other by an empty line. Here is another paragraph, like this. And so you can have your actual file structured in this way, and you can have a plain text file just with these. You could use just these and you would already be good to go. But org mode offers so many more possibilities. For example, we can apply strong emphasis, as you see here, to either a word or a phrase by wrapping that word between asterisks, as you can see here. The asterisks must be adjacent to word endings or beginnings, word boundaries, but without a space between them. Not like this. You see, this doesn't work. It has to be like this. And we can extend this to also use, for example, slanted emphasis, which is like this. And you can see that Emacs will use a heavy typographic weight for strong emphasis, a bold font for strong emphasis, and then an italic style for slanted emphasis, as you can see here. There are other styles as well that we can use, depending on what kind of document we are authoring, what sort of information we are referencing. For example, sometimes you want to call some output, some text by its proper name. You want to render it verbatim text here, just like this. Verbatim will, in most contexts, simply mean monospaced, have it as monospaced. But when we are reading this, or rather when we are authoring this, we want to associate this markup element with some meaning. We want to signify something with those equals signs that we add between our text. And what we signify with the verbatim text is to say that this is standard, but it has no further meaning than that. Meaning that it is standard yet generic. If we want to be more specific, we can say that this is the proper, for example, function name, just like this. And so this is code, whereas this one here is generic verbatim, generic output. Let's call it generic output, like this. Whereas the other is proper, a proper name of a function of some code that you would be referencing in a program, for example. There are more styles, but they are perhaps less commonly encountered. One of them is the underline that you specify by adding the underscores before and after the word or phrase. As always, there is no space between the word boundaries and the org markup. And there is also text that is struck through, with the plus signs between the word or phrase, just like that. Org mode can use links. You don't have to type out a link, but we will see both cases here. Let's now do Emacs, which is the Emacs way of invoking a command by its name, and write org-insert-link, just like this. And org mode asks us for a link type. For example, we want to have an HTTPS link, and we will add the link like this. And then we give it a description, for example, my personal website, just like this. And this is a link. You can, of course, have the links written out yourself, in which case you do them like this. You have nested square brackets, as you can see over here. We have the first pair of square brackets, which is this pair over here, which is the link, the URL, and then the other pair over here is the description of the link. But you don't have to write this out yourself. You can just use the org link, the org insert link command. Links can also be added. Let's come here. Links can also be added like this, like visit my website, for example, and then I will just have my website just like this. And org mode understands this as a link, and if you hover your mouse over it, it will go to that website. Those two are identical. They do the same thing exactly. Org mode can do much more. Its markup is much more featureful. We can, for example, have unordered lists. And those are done in a variety of ways, one of which is to add the dash sign at the beginning of a line, followed by a space, and then some text, just like this. Let's have it item A, item B, item C. The same as above, but this time we use the plus sign, item A and item B and item C, just like that. When we are writing a list, and this applies to more things in general, but let's follow here the example. When we are writing a list, we can, instead of doing what I was doing here, type enter and type in markup again, and then continue just like this. We can use the interactivity of org mode to economize on typing and to basically tell Emacs to do what we mean. I will type then, I will hold down the Alt key, meta as it is known in Emacs parlance, and I will type meta and enter, meta return. Meta return, and now it is allowing me to type like this, and you can see how I do it just like this. And this applies to other elements. Notice here, before I was doing it and it was adding the plus sign, but notice that org can actually understand the context and will do the right thing based on the context. Lists can also be ordered, else numbered list. And this we can do with a number and then the dot followed by a space, and then we have item A, and then meta ret, let's do that, meta return, item B, and you see how this works, and we can keep doing this. Same as above, for a different style, and we have it like this with a number and a closing parenthesis, a closing bracket, and you can see how this works like this. Let's go back to our lists here. Let's go back here, and or rather, let me continue further down. We can have nested lists, and we can do this simply by typing them out, item A, and then item B, and item C, just like this. And then let's say that item A has some sub elements, a sub list. And we will do that by just adding indentation ourselves, adding spaces. And now we can have item A1, and then you see what it happened there when I pressed meta and return. It understood that I am inside of the nested list and it went here. But if I am here, now it understands that I am on the outer list and it works there. Let's see it again. You see, item A4, just like this. This is very convenient. What we can do with org mode is to change, or rather to combine, the markup used for lists to make our nested lists more legible, easier to spot. The way to do that, one way to do that, would be to just delete all the markup and replace it with something else. But of course you can understand this would be very cumbersome and inefficient when you have long lists. Instead, we can rely on the power of Emacs and org mode to do this interactively in one go. We hold down the shift key and we press left or right, the left or right arrow key, when we are on a list element, as you can see me over here. When we are on a list element, we just hold down shift and press right or left, and this will cycle between the various styles of list that we have. And let's say that I want these to be dashes, and look at this here above where I am. And if I do the same here, notice that org mode is smart enough to not affect the inner list. It only affects the outer list. So I can have a different style like this, and this makes it much more easy for me to read. And now I can have it like this, item B1, and then I want to do something else now, and so I will do it like this, B2. And you can see how this is. Now notice that I have here, notice that I have elements that I want to indent, but I am not exactly sure how many spaces I have to add. This is a bit tricky. What I will do then is I will hold down the meta key and I will use the right arrow key. Notice what it did here. It shifted that element, you see here, it shifted that element to the right, and so it made it now a nested list of this one. But notice how when I do this, it renumbers all the other elements. You see here, we have, for example, here, right now we have the number 5. But if I put this back, it now becomes the number 6. And that is very, very helpful. Because now we can use the meta and the arrow keys to make lists like this. Very easy to spot. And now I can also change the style here, and I am already working with my lists in a very efficient way, and now I can organize my thoughts however I want, however it makes sense for me. This is basically what we have with the markup of org mode. There are a few other things we can do. For example, if we type Control-C, Control-comma, we are given the option to input what are known as blocks. And these are blocks of text that will have a special style depending on the type of block we have. For example, I will now use the source block for Emacs Lisp, and this will be Emacs Lisp code that I am now writing myself. And you can see here, I am just doing something super generic, nothing fancy about it. But the point is that org mode understands this is Emacs Lisp, and it gives me the power to style it in a way that looks like Emacs Lisp and to indent it accordingly and to do stuff like that. And of course, there are many, many types of blocks. And there are a lot of things you can do with org source blocks, including literate programming. But this is a topic I want to discuss at another time. Let's return now to headings, because headings are like the foundation of org's functionality, what you can really do with it. And we had, as I said earlier, a heading here, heading here. The single star in this case means that this heading is a level 1 heading. And so we can infer that heading level 2 is with 2 stars, and then heading level 3 with 3 stars, and then so on for however many levels of depth you want. What I said earlier about meta and return also applies to headings. For example, you see here more headings, heading level 3, and I can continue just like this, more here. And if I go to this one, you see, I have 3 headings which are level 3, and now I am on heading level 2. And if I do that, level 2 here. You see how it goes? And if I go to number 1 and heading level 1 here, you see how this works? So org mode is very smart about the contextuality of its markup, of its notation, and of what you can do with meta, return, shift, and the arrow keys, meta and the arrow keys. Speaking of meta and the arrow keys, say now that I want to change this. Let's change the language so that it is not confusing. I wrote this as heading level 1, but actually I made a mistake. This should be heading level 3. So I type meta and the arrow keys, and I can shift this heading in terms of its depth, in terms of its level. So I can add or remove stars to it just by holding down meta, the alt key, and pressing the right or left arrow keys. Let's use heading level 3. This also works for headings that are nested like this, because here we have heading level 1 and heading level 2. Heading level 1, let's say, is heading A, okay? Which means that this is A1. And then this here is A2, okay? So this is A11, and A12, and then since I wrote it, let me write it for all of them, and this one is A21, okay? Just like this. We can do the same of what I did with the meta and the right or left arrow keys, but we can shift the entire tree. Instead of doing this, of shifting an individual heading, we can do this. Meta shift, hold down Alt and Shift, and type the right or left arrow keys, and you see they all move together now. And they retain their relative status between them, but now they are all increased in depth. They go further in depth or outer in depth, just like this, and you can see how powerful this is. Each heading can have its own paragraphs and its own lists and everything there. This is a paragraph, and you can have it for all of them like this. The power of having documents structured in this way is that you can control the visibility of each heading individually. Let's see how this works. We have this big document now already. We have added a few things, but let's say that I want to read it. I am revisiting this document. Now it is a massive document, but I don't want to read through all of it. I want to go over the heading and press the Tab key. And this controls the visibility of elements in that heading. I just made org mode hide the contents of this heading, and you see I type the tab again and it changes the visibility from hidden to visible, just like that. When you are doing the same thing on a heading that has subheadings, this will do the following. It will cycle from the state of visibility to the state of hidden. Then it will show you the contents of the current heading, but not of the subheadings. And then if you type tab again, it will show you all the contents. Granted, those now don't have anything, but let's imagine that they have some text. Each of them has some text, just like this. Let's see it again, how this works, and you see you cycle between those three states, among those three states. And this is very powerful because now you can go to where you want to go and say, you know what, I don't need to see this, I can hide it and I can see the others, or I don't need to see all those three, I want to see those instead, and you can do it just like that. There is also Shift and the Tab key, which operates globally, meaning that it operates across the document, and that may be another option for you. In org mode, when we are like this, notice that these are different levels of depth, but right now they all are on the same level of indentation, which might make it a bit hard for us to quickly identify the different levels. For this, what we could do is we could add some literal spaces, and we could bring our text further in order to visually make sense of its depth. However, this is not a nice way of doing it because it is prone to mistakes, prone to error, and also it may not look so nice in other contexts. For example, if you are viewing your document from outside of Emacs. What we can do instead is we can add virtual indentation. And this means that we are viewing things according to their level of depth, but without actually modifying the underlying document. Let's see this. Emacs org-indent-mode. And look at this now. Look at what org is doing here. And this beautifies, I think, or otherwise renders more efficient our interface. Because now we know that this is a level 1 heading, and this is a text that belongs to the level 1 heading, while this belongs here. And now we have a visual understanding of the levels of depth. It's not just notional, it's not just a matter of counting the asterisks in order to be sure if we got this right, or relying on the color scheme of our theme, because depending on your preferences, such as my preferences, you don't want to have headings that have an intense color. You want to have headings that are differentiated by color, yet have no intense coloration of their own, because you are authoring documents, you are writing stuff. You don't want to have a theme that has too many colors. For example, of course, you can have a theme that has too many colors, in which case the colors alone would tell you more about the structure, but having this option doesn't hurt either. One of the features of org mode is to use it for to-do lists, as I already said in the introduction. And the to-do lists are associated with headings. Basically, we can have headings and the nesting between headings to write our to-do lists. For example, I have now a level 1 heading, and I will say, let's say I want to, let's say, buy groceries. Okay, this is now an ordinary heading. But if I do shift and the arrow key here, it will shift it between the different keywords I have for my to-do states. By default, there only are two keywords. There is the to-do keyword and the done keyword. Sorry, I pressed something else there. And the done keyword. And you see how you can cycle between no keyword, to-do, and done by pressing shift and the right or left arrow keys. Of course, you can also type this out and it will have the same effect depending on what you want to do. And what you can do if you are writing a list, let's say buy groceries, okay? But now what I want to do actually is I want to have a sub list. Let's say I want to buy fruit and let's say buy vegetables. But before we do that, let's make this a to-do. And now I will press meta shift and return, and now this makes it another to-do. So buy food for my dog, for example, and then buy vegetables. And I can continue with this, buy flour, and so on. And you can have all those just like that. And you can then tick them off and say, okay, I did this, and so on for the others. What you can do with the to-do lists is that you can have them when they are like this. So a level that is the parent, and then you have levels that are sub-levels of that. What you can do with this is that you can have dependencies, meaning that buy groceries, for this task to be accomplished, those other tasks have to be accomplished first, and then this will be marked as done. What we can do, we can use org mode to give us a sense of our progress. And we can do that by adding square brackets at the end of the heading, and inside of them adding the /. Let's see, I have this / here, and now I am adding a new entry here to the list, or generally I am making some modification to it, and you see already that org mode turned this into a progress list now, by whatever, okay? And org mode has turned this into a progress list, and meaning that if I make this done, you see now 1 out of 5 has been done, and now they are 2 out of 5 and 3 out of 5, just like this. And if I mark them as undone, org mode will keep again track of this. Another way to do this is to do the square brackets, as I said earlier, and inside of them add the percent sign. And when I do this, I get to have it like this. As you can see here, you can use both of those, though depending on what you do, it's probably overkill, but there may be scenario where having both makes sense. And when we are done, we can say, okay, you know what, we are done. And org mode will not mark the parent as done, because it is a good idea for us to see, to confirm that this has actually been done. And so we say, you know what, this has been done, and now it has been closed, just like this. Notice that org mode has these closed keywords. I am not sure right now if this is the default or if this is an option that I have enabled, but I think if it's not the default, it is a very good idea to have this, because usually you will be doing something that is time sensitive and you want to have an idea of when you closed the task and what it was that you were doing. Maybe you are also keeping a log of what you are doing, so you want to have the timestamp there. Another way of doing this is to say, you know what, buy stuff. Again, let's do it like this. And this is a to-do. I am typing it now out. And then you can have an ordinary list like this. But instead of using an ordinary list, you can add square brackets and the space between them, you see, like this. And you can say, for example, fruit and veggies and dog food, of course, and so on for the other things. When you have this checklist like this, it is the same idea as above, but a different way of writing it. You can go inside of the checklist and you can type the X, capital X, to mark it as done, or you can do Control C, Control C, and it will be marked as done. Control C, Control C. Control C, Control C is a very common key binding in org mode. You will see it for a lot of things, but for now, let's keep it simple. When we have these here, we just do Control C, Control C, and it marks them as completed. But let's see this in practice. You see, 1 of 4, 2 of 4, 3 of 4, and we are done. And then we can check it off from our list altogether. This is very good. There are more things we can do with tasks, but let's see what we can do here. To do, let's say I have a meeting for one of my Emacs coaching sessions. And let's say we will be talking about Emacs. Talk about Emacs with, let's say, John. Okay? And we have this appointment, and let's say that this appointment has a specific deadline. What I want to do then is I want to associate this task with the given day or time. I don't just want to have a to-do here. I want to have a sense of the time sensitivity of the task over here. Let's see then what we can do. Control C, Control D is the key binding that we use to specify a deadline for the heading we are currently editing. Once we do this, org mode will pop up the date selection interface. And this interface is very powerful. It gives us a view of the current months, the month before and the month after. And we can now select the date. We can select the date by typing it out. For example, today is the 23rd of May, 2023. Let's say I want to meet on the 27th. Just like this, by typing 27, you can already see this yellowish area at the bottom of my screen in the mini buffer. You can see there that the date 27 corresponds to the 27th of May 2023, which is a Saturday. And I can write it like this, or I could say Sat for Saturday. There are many ways to do it. Or I could say, for example, plus 4D for 4 days from now. There are many ways to input the date like this. Or you can hold down Shift and with the arrow keys move up and down. You see what I am selecting here, and you can have the date that you want. The days that are red are days that are holidays according to your calendar. This is something that you can configure. Personally, I have not configured it, so these are the global holidays. But that's beside the point. Let's say I am picking Saturday, so I used Shift and the arrow keys, but the meeting that I am having with this John person here is not just on a given day, it's also on a specific time. I cannot just show up to the meeting whenever I want. I have to be there at the right time. Let's say this is 5 p.m. local time. I can type 5 p.m. and because I already selected the date, org understands that 5 p.m. is for the Sunday that I picked earlier. You don't have to use p.m. or a.m. You can use the 24-hour clock as well, in which case you would just say we meet at 17 hours and you have it like that. Whenever you are ready, you have picked your day, you have picked the time, you just type return, you type enter, and now you see that org mode has added a deadline, and now it has associated it, as you can see over here, with a timestamp. And now we can see that I have to meet with John on Sunday at 17 hours, just like that. There is something similar to a deadline, which is called a scheduled task. Let's say start working on my book. Okay, I have this idea that I want to write a book or whatever, and I want to start writing this book from Monday, the coming Monday. This is not a deadline. I don't want to finalize the book on Monday. I just want to start with it, and then I have, let's say, 2 months to worry about when it will be published. So for this case, we want to use the scheduled entry. Control C, Control S for scheduled, and then we have the same interface that I talked about earlier, so I won't elaborate on it more. You just pick a date, and you type enter, and now you have your scheduled entry like that. A heading can have both a scheduled entry and a deadline as well. Let's say my book writing starts on Monday, but then I have a deadline, let's add it, for, let's say, June, like this, we can make it the June 30. Okay? And I will add the deadline as well. And you see how this works? So I have from Monday, the coming Monday, until June 30 to submit this. And then when you are done, of course, you can do the to do and done. You can toggle the states as we have already covered. Having dates like this allows you to visualize them on the agenda. I won't show this now because I don't have an agenda buffer ready, but I could show you what, no, actually, let me show you. Let me show you what we can do with this. Let me see how we can do this. Let me write this to a file. I will call this tmp demo.org. Okay. And now please ignore this step. Probably it won't make much sense to you, but don't worry about it. Org agenda files. I will tell you about this at another point. And what we want to have there is tmp and demo.org. And I will do it like that. Let me very quickly check that I did this correctly in another file that I have over there. I can switch to it and see. So it works correctly. Now what I want to do then, now that my agenda works, I want to do, let's split the Emacs in two so that we can see. I want to do Emacs org-agenda and type enter. And this is the way to view our tasks that are associated with deadlines or scheduled dates that are time sensitive. There are lots of things we can do in this menu. The org agenda views, as they are known as, are very powerful. But for our case now, we want to type the letter A to visit the weekly agenda. I will type the letter A, and I see now that on Sunday I have a meeting with John. Let me write something for today. Let's see. To do prepare demo on org basics. Let's say like this, and this is for today. I just do it like this and I save my file. Let's say that this is for today, but this should be at what's the time now? Let me see, at let's say it should be at like this, 15 hours, like this. Let me save it, and let's come here, and I will type G to generate the buffer again. And now you see my agenda like this. And if I add more things, let's say that I have to do, take the dog for a walk, for example. And let's say that I have to do this sometime at 17 hours. But if we go a bit earlier or a bit later, my dog will not complain, and we can see how we can start adding stuff to our agenda here, and then we can say, for example, review what I did today, and this could be again a scheduled item that I will do. No, I did a deadline. Okay, doesn't matter. But this is something that I will do tonight. And we can see how this is. There are many options for the agenda, lots of things we can do with it, but this already gives you an idea. When we are in the agenda buffer, we can type the tab key to open the file that corresponds to the given entry and be on the given heading, just like this. So we can make any edits we want here, or we can see, because you know your entry may have some text here, which is the context is here. Okay, it has some more information and stuff you want to know. So we can do that with the tab key over a heading, but we can also do it with the return key, the enter key, and now we have just switched here completely. This is the idea. Let's go back to the agenda. When we are here, we can filter items. There are different key bindings for this, but I want to tell you more about this in a future video, because there are a lot of topics that we can do with the agenda, and I have already covered a lot of ground. But note that you can change the agenda in many ways. You can filter it, you can show specific days, you can show the whole week, and you can show other ranges as well, and you can have lots and lots of different views of your tasks. What I did not show at all, but which is very useful when you have tasks, is tags. For example, this is at home, let's say, and let's say that this is at work, for example, and this is my project, and you can have more like this, more tags just like this. You use the colon sign, and you have tags that are colon delimited. The outer columns will demarcate the area where the tags are. And the tags are very useful when you are viewing your agenda let's see it again, because now you can also infer context from the tag as it appears over there. So this is another thing to bear in mind. Tasks can have priorities, meaning that you can have stuff like this and say, you know what, this is a top level priority, whereas this is a lower level. You can have something like this. Personally, I don't use priorities, because if something has to be done on the given day, it means that it has to be done. There is no such thing as a priority for it. If it is time sensitive, it has to be done in the given day and time. What I do in terms of workflow, and I will conclude with this, is that I am very disciplined about what goes into my agenda. I only associate tasks with a deadline or a scheduled entry when those tasks are actually time sensitive. For example, if I have a wish list item, like, I don't know, watch a movie or something, I won't add that to my agenda. It's not something that has to be done tonight or tomorrow morning or whenever. It would be nice if I did it tonight, but it's not really time sensitive. It could be tomorrow, it could be in 1 month or whenever. Not adding arbitrary stuff to your agenda will keep your agenda focused. Whereas if you add everything that comes up to mind, if you add an arbitrary date to it, an arbitrary timestamp to it, then you are simply crowding out the tasks that are actually time sensitive. You are adding all that noise to your agenda, and then you visit the agenda and you have like hundreds of items here, and basically you feel disempowered, because now you are like, who is going to do all this work? Nobody. So I say avoid adding too many stuff to the agenda, and just because you have the option of using priorities doesn't mean that you have to do it. There may be cases where it makes sense, but try to be parsimonious with how you use org's markup. Don't overdo it. And I will close on this note. Thank you very much for your attention, folks. This was an introduction to the basics of org mode, of the workflows that we can get going with org mode. There is much more to do with org, but this already shows you some of the capabilities, and hopefully introduces you to concepts that you can start using right away and be more productive with Emacs and org. Thank you very much for your attention. You can always check my website, protesilaos.com. Maybe I can write it again here, just like this, protesilaos.com. And you can find all my work on Emacs, philosophy, and many other topics. You can find it on my website. And you will also find information about the numerous packages that I have written and maintain, packages for GNU Emacs. Thank you very much for your attention, folks. Goodbye from my side. Take care. Bye-bye.